Richards and Arlene Gillette, who, as young girls, went there, and Arlene had several relatives who worked there. But I'm going to give the history, a little bit of the history first, but before that, I just want to make a couple announcements. Our April program will also be here, and it is, Megan Henry will be talking about the 4-H, about 4-H through the years. May 28th will be here, and Bayonne Gowan will be talking about her great aunt, Bayonne Whipple, who was in vaudeville with Walter Houston. And Bayonne Whipple and Walter Houston spent lots of time here. They bought a house on Church Street. They called the Rose Cottage because Bayonne Whipple's real name was Minor Rose. Her maiden name was Rose. And she and her sisters lived in that house off and on when they visited Candor. And now that is where, well, that's where Clara and John Yost lived, and now that's where Gail, their daughter, lives. May 17th, we are having a chicken barbecue, serving at 11 at Double Down. And we are in conjunction with the Misfits Motorcycle Club is helping us out. We have tickets available tonight. If anyone wants to take some, they're $15 a dinner. If anyone would like to do that. In June, we will also have another fundraiser. We'll have a yard sale. We were going to do it the same weekend as Prefix, but found out that the pavilion is in use that day. Other fundraiser ongoing all the time as the can and bottle pickup. We save cans and bottles and take them to the neighborhood recycling place in Owego. You can drop your bags of cans at Home Central in the trailer there, or on Fairfield Road at the old Methodist Church. So the glove factory had a long history of Candor. It was an important business here for 62 years. And in its heyday, it employed over 200 people. Edward Wands, an experienced glove maker from Gloversville, moved to Candor, and along with several businessmen, John McCarty, William Payne, and Henry Potter, started this in 1895. According to the late Lucetta Rowe, the operation was all on the first floor. Sewing machines were on 2 long tables on the left side of the room. Cutting and finishing were done on the right side. The upstairs was used for storage. Now, other people may have been in there and seen other arrangements, and actually, just tonight, someone gave me 3 small pictures of the inside of the glove factory. So afterward, you can come look at all these displays. Workers were paid by the piece, and up here and on the table over there, you'll see a list of piecework prices from 1934. At that time, they earned, besides the piecework money they got, they earned 17.5 cents a week. Since it was piecework, some of them actually took the work home, and people who actually didn't go to the glove factory except to pick up supplies worked from home. At one point, each person worked on a specific part of the glove, but later the workers would complete the assembly and sewing of the entire glove. Dies for cutting parts were purchased rather than being designed locally. Workmanship and materials were of top quality. They used calf, pig, sheep, kid, and hog skins and horse hides. In the 1930s, they began making leather jackets out of deer hide. Sometimes with the leftover pieces of leather, they made stuffed elephants for children. And there's one over there. There's seats up here. Come right up. Becky, you can come sit by Marion.
I'll sit right here.
Basically, the Wands Glove Factory was a custom producer rather than a mass production operation, even though they made 500 different styles of gloves. They had a line of gloves and mittens in regular production, and then even those were customized to suit individual buyers on occasion. On the table over there are lots of advertisements that they would send to people showing the different kinds of gloves, and a lot of them actually said Candor right on the glove. The workers were treated well with company picnics and Christmas parties. During the wars, the company newsletter was sent to past workers who were now serving our country. Salesmen went all over the world touting the gloves. In 1906, Edward Wands returned from a 4-month selling trip that covered 18,000 miles and took him to the principal cities of 17 states. He sold enough gloves at that time to keep the factory busy for a year at the rate of 4,500 gloves made every day. In 1916, the company was reorganized and renamed the Candor Glove Company. Wilson Moore became one of the owners and began managing the company, and Wilson was known as Sam. During World War I, they were so busy that they opened a branch in North Valley with Clifford Fessenden as manager. In 1923, Edward Wands withdrew from the original company and worked only in North Valley under the name Wands Glove Company. That company went bankrupt in 1925, and Edward Wands died the next year at the age of 62. Meanwhile, the Candor Glove Company continued and did very well, selling all over the United States, including Hawaii, way out there, and the countries of England, Bolivia, Argentina, the diamond mines in South Africa. Between World War I and World War II, the factory was a booming business for the community, as 60% of their orders were for the U.S. government. The gloves bought by Anaconda Copper for use in their copper mines and smelters in Chile were specially packaged so they could be carried by mule or llama. Mm-hmm. Sam Moore died unexpectedly in 1957, and then the trains went down. The train stopped going through Candor at that time. The train was taken out, and so leather could not be brought in and gloves could not be taken out easily. And the factory closed on February 1st, 1957. 20 years later, in 1977, the building was demolished. So in those 20 years, lots of local people, youngsters, teenagers, went into the building and did all kinds of mischief. So that is the history. And now we'll let these ladies talk. Oh, before I do that, I should tell you, Rita Quinlan wanted to come. She's been ill, but she's getting better. And her father worked there. He was a mailman, but after he did his mail route, he would go to the glove factory, and she said, turn gloves. So they were sewn inside out, and his job was to turn them. And I guess, is Arlene?
I think Raymond's going to go first.
Oh, Mary, that's what you're done. All right. Sit down. You're going to sit down, yes.
Okay. At about 10 years old, in about 1942, Lucetta Rowe approached my parents and asked if I would be willing and able to bring over my wagon full of pot to the glove factory, that they would needed something cold in the afternoon, and that was a hot, busy building there. So I started and did it for quite a few years. And let's see.
You want to tell them where you got the pot? Where did you get the pot from that you told over there?
The gas station, 2 doors from my house, right there on the corner.
Where the loft was, now it's a house?
Where the restaurant used to be, that was a gas station years back. And I went there and got 2 cases, wood cases, they put in the wagon. The back one wouldn't fit down in, so it had to tip up like a road. But I would haul that over to the back door of the glove factory. And Pete Bolton was kind of a floor worker, I think. And he would come out, he'd watch for me to come. And he'd come and help me get that wagon up into the sewing room. And the ladies were all sewing, probably 15 of them, maybe 20. And I'd go down through and sew pot. I had the can opener, or the bottle opener, and I soon learned what they liked, you know, and catered to them. I went on to the sewing room. There was a big room where the good cow hides laid all ready to be cut into gloves. And, on the other side was, the cover. And then you went on and there was the man that, when they were sewn, the gloves, he would put them over a form. And he had like a little mallet, and he would pound those seams so that they opened and laid flat for the person to wear. And a lot of those gloves at that time were going to World War II veterans. I remember one from Candor, and I think it was Bob Brown, got a pair, and he was just thrilled. He was overseas somewhere, and was issued a pair of the leather gloves from the glove factory.
And my cousin, Kathy's mother, put a date and her address in there, and she was in the inspector's room.
Yeah.
And the last department, and she put her name in it. She was not married. She never heard anything. She was a clerk.
Yeah.
How much did you charge for each bottle? How much did you charge for the soda?
It was 10 cents a bottle, and I had an opener, that I opened it for them. And I soon learned to cater, you know, to what flavors they liked. I still remember to this day that Sam Moore wanted cream soda every day when I went.
She got one.
And I got $1 cent a bottle. They're all on drug, but they're like, and delivered. And then I would I didn't have anything to do with the empties. They didn't evidently collect them back then. And we had nothing to do with taking them back or anything, so I don't know what they did with them, but, that was my job for that. No,
Put your thing up so they can.
Your microphone.
oh, yeah. Let's see. I had a red wagon that I hauled. It was a radio flyer, and was able to do this with the 2 cases in it. And I'd get to the back door of the glove factory, and Pete Bolton was kind of a floor worker. That was the Bolton that worked in the post office, her father-in-law, years ago, before I worked there. She, was the main one there for a while. Where was I?
So when you pulled your wagon, you were up on Spencer Road, and the glove factory was across, was the ball
Yes.
field there
I
then?
went in the back door,
Mhm.
and there was just one single door, but there was a little double steps. The steps went up, there was a platform, and they went down on the other side, so that people could come in from either direction and get in that door. And that went into the big sewing room, and there was double row down through on the one side, probably had 15 in all. And then they had a row over the other side. No one ever worked in that one. Evidently, they thought they might need that. They evidently never did. But they had the other part was full of her relatives. That's what she's here. Do you wanna talk about them now?
I think she
hit me a lot on this.
I heard that you still have elastic in your sewing kit that was from the glove factories. Some
I still have that one.
elastic.
Oh, yeah, the mittens that they made, I had a pair, and they were leather, mitten, stirrup here, and then they had a wide band of elastic. It was a finished hand, so it made a perfect mitten, and they made those, and my folks happened to, I don't know whether the setter arranged it, the setter row, because she worked there and lived across from us, or whether my mother bought it from the factory. I don't know how we got them. They were nice mittens.
Okay, I think you covered everything that's here, but if somebody question later, they can ask you, maybe you can answer. We'll let Arlene talk now, okay?
It was
Give
in
her
the,
microphone. Thank you.
it was in the early forties when I would go up there. I was around 12 years old, and, I would go in the glove factory from, Carney Street. I'd go in the main entrance, and, the first thing I would go to was, where they cut the glove out. There was the 3 men that worked there. One was my uncle. I had, what am I saying?
How many?
Relations.
Lots of relatives.
And lots of relatives that worked there, so, I always found a home there. They never asked us, we never had to sign anything to go in or out, so I guess they trusted us. Oh dear. The first thing that you'd, get was, as I say, is a place where they cut the glove out. And as Marion said, there's a big pile of the hide, leather that, and then you go on into the sewing room. And that was the bigger part, was the sewing room. And they had huge, what do you call them? Where thread is, on thread. Spools, huge spools. And we used to make, stuffed tools and things out of them, had fun with them, yeah. Okay. The leather room was the largest, maybe 20, like we decided around 20 people. All ladies, no men, that sewed, that I remember. And next they went to the presser where they pressed the glove out. And, they had a presser that looked just like a glove, a hand, and they had openings in it. And they would apparently press that out. And then they could, next place would go for your packing. And that's where my cousin worked, in the packing. Yeah. And I think maybe 4 was there working. I just remember them using a little, metal hammer. You said it was a metal hammer, to press the gloves. There were 3 women packing all the time. And as I said, Mariella put her name in one. Oh dear. I don't remember how I got to the glove factory. I must have been around 13. And I had about 5 aunts that sewed, an uncle, and a cutter, and a cousin as a specter.
Now, does anyone else know anything that they would like to share about the glove factory? Someone else maybe had relatives that worked there? Heard stories about it? Elsie?
My dad did. He carried mail like Mary said. And then on Sundays during the war, he'd go in and work.
Is that right?
Did you hear her?
She said her uncle went after his mailroom, and he worked there after the mailroom and on,
My
Oh,
dad,
yeah.
her
your
father.
dad,
Howard.
and he worked on.
I think he retired before just about as I went to work.
My dad's mom works there. We don't know what she did per se, but he would talk often about
What
her.
was that?
Dad's mom, Blanche.
Oh,
She worked there.
Blanche.
Blanche
O'Connor.
O'Connor.
I didn't hear the last name.
O'Connor.
Oh, O'Connor. I don't either. Any question?
Does anyone have questions we'll start with Marion. And anyone have any questions for Marion?
Once you were done delivering soda, did you go on to work in the factory itself?
Did you work in the factory at all?
No, just taking a bath. I was 10 when I started. And I think I worked 2 summers there, taking it. And they put in a pop machine.
Put you out of business.
Can you tell us what you did with the money you earned?
Oh, yes. What did you do with the money? I don't remember the first year. I bought a doll carriage. Yes. A little wicker one. And, the next
One was a
year.
camera.
Huh?
Next one was a camera.
Yeah, I got a camera.
Brownie.
Good. Yeah, the second year.
Any questions for Arlene?
Arlene, where did you live at that time?
Mountain Avenue,
So you had a hike.
yes.
Well, like I said, the glove factory was here for 62 years, so there were many, many people, Candorites and others, that worked there during those 62 years. Up here, we have a couple photos, so later you can come look. Here's one, and there are men in this picture, so men did work there, and also here. And in this picture, the man in the middle with the top hat or derby is Edward Wands. And this is the home that Edward Wands built, which was on Spencer Road. It's still there. After he no longer needed it, it became a nursing home for quite a long time. Now I think it's probably apartments. So there's pictures of the glove factory there, another picture of workers, a check,
I like to see it.
more workers, so there's a lot of pictures of workers there. This is when Edward Wands had to file bankruptcy for the North Valley Wands Glove Company. He and his wife, Candor had nothing to do with that. Edward and his wife owned almost all the shares, and so they went bankrupt. These are gloves. This is the sheet. So to make up the Z thumb, I'm not sure what a Z thumb is, but they got 15 cents for that piece. In double sewn outseam, 14 cents. There's lots of different prices here on different mittens and the backs. This one was 9 cents. Here's one that was 10 cents. So the different pieces brought different prices, and of course, I'm sure people tried to make as many pieces as they could so they could get lots of money along with their 17.5 cents. But later, I'm sure they got more than 17.5 cents a week. This is an article from the Candor Courier about one of the picnics they had. I believe they had a picnic every year, and someone here wrote a poem about it. And this talks about closing. Now, when they knew that it needed to close, Candor had a development corporation at that time, and the people that were on the development corporation tried to find another glove maker to come into town to take over, but they were unsuccessful. So they ended up closing the glove factory. So I want you to come later and look at all these displays. These are blankets from the blanket factory. Now, the Candor Blanket Factory made horse blankets. Not blankets for people, but horse blankets. And here's some of the wool. There's pictures here of the blanket factory. It was, you won't be able to see it from where you are, I realize that, but along the creek, now where the Candor doctor's office is, started with a Candor woolen mill. And, Senator Charles Barger, he ended up, he'd been in the Civil War and been shot, and he was at Gettysburg, and then he went to law school and then became a senator from this area. And he ended up buying that in 1879, or 1876. He purchased the woolen mills, and then he, in 1879, started manufacturing horse blankets, and he added on to the factory a few times. And here's a picture from the creek side. You can see a lot of water going over the dam there. There's receipts, there's lots of pictures of people that work there, and the big looms that they used. The blanket factory stayed in business, and again, they had people going around selling these, to make sure that they were bought. And it employed 50 people and made about 50,000 horse blankets it's a year.
How did they ship them out?
By the train, Charles Berger died, in December of 1891, and then George Hart and John Feebig, who were important people in town, and they took over. And, they built a new addition, and, they gave employees a 10% raise a couple different times, and installed new machinery, and then in 1920, John Feebig died, and in 1921, they were beginning to feel the effects of the automobile, and not many people needed horses anymore. So, they ended up, ceasing production. They sold all their stock, and, they tried to step up production and get a lot done, but then they ended up, in 1922, they closed the blanket factory, and the blanket factory was then turned into a shoe factory. Now, the shoe factory didn't last very long. The shoe factory in 1922, so right after the blanket factory closed, a man named Theodore Oster, he was a shoe production expert, and he had a lot of years of experience, and he decided to come here. They were both from Binghamton, and E.J. Shoes started down there. So they decided to come here and manufacture shoes. And they were gonna mostly do children's shoes and men's slippers. They did a lot of renovations on the blanket factory. This is in 1922. And in 1923, in January, the shoe factory opened. Well, they said, at the time they had a big production as the shoe factory opened, and they had about 700 people come to see what was going on. Had a big party. And, George Johnson of Endicott Johnson sent a letter of encouragement and congratulations. The cutting room was the concrete floor of the newly constructed brick building, which later became the public service garage, which was torn down to make room for the doctor's office. So before that, it was this brick building. The main building, the former blanket factory, was fitted on the lower floor with odd machinery that lasted, welted, edge trimmed, shaped, etc. The second floor was used for sewing. The building had electric wiring and steam heat. Production was expected to be limited at first. On February 8th, though, the plant shipped several cases of shoes. Remember, they'd only opened in January. They had 50 employees with more to be added, and they would raise the employees' wages 10%. But by June of that year, stockholders were complaining, and they were told that everything was going well, but in December, they declared bankruptcy. It only lasted a year. And that's some information about it. This is Marion Kelsey, for those who know, he used to live on Kelsey Road. This is his share. He had one share in the company. And most of the people who invested in the company never got their money back. There were several cheese factories around, based on where the farmers were, of course. And up in Fairfield, actually on the corner of Candor Hill Road and Fairfield Road, there was a cheese factory. And there had been one there before, but in 1902, the Fairfield Cheese Company, cheese and butter factory, was formed in March. The dairymen in Fairfield wanted to do something with all their milk. And they had an association. Some of the first shareholders were A.B. Strong, M.E. Strong, R.S. Barden, R.E. Barden, A.J. Newman, R.P. Warner. So names that a lot of you have heard: Charles Bakeman and Leah Barrett. A lot of those people lived up in that area forever. And they asked a man named Christian to run this, buy their milk, and they paid Christian 1.15 per pound for all cheese manufactured, and 2 cents a pound for butter. He was then to purchase from them all the cheese manufactured and pay the ruling price of the Utica cheese market or the New York market. However, if the farmer chose to sell his cheese in New York, a half-cent per pound was to be deducted for freight. The farmers were to be paid each month. During the course of the several years that it was in existence, different people were the cheese makers. Most served only 1 or 2 years, but H. Edgett served for 8 years, from 1910 to 1917. And right here, we have a couple record books from there. And this is a picture of it, and some other things. And then the last thing I have here, we have the Candor brick factory. I don't know if you know where the Blinn Farm is on Spencer Road. And that's a picture of his house. And the man who started it, his name was Mansfield Bunnell in 1835. He bought land on Spencer Road where the school bus garage is where the brickyard was. And they said years ago, they could go back in there and still dig up clay. And these are pictures of some of the houses that were built by bricks from there. The first brick house built in the town of Candor was the Bolton home on Tuttleville Road. And this is a house on Ithaca Road. I know you can't see it, but anyway, if you come closer, you'll see that. And this is a cornerstone brick, which is very heavy. I won't pick it up. It was collected in 1981, the day the upper mill was torn down. The mill was built of Candor brick in 1838. And this brick, one of the bricks I had, this one says CB Company, Candor Brick Company. There's another brick somewhere that had another letter on it, and I thought it meant Bunnell. The last factory here is the White Brothers Chair Factory, which was in Willseyville, and I'm not quite sure where. Maybe somebody here knows. I'm not sure exactly where. And in 1886, the three brothers started the factory, and Asa Frank was a designer, manager, and principal owner. And these are what he applied for a patent. He got a patent on his bent chair, and this was his table. And it says the factory was located near the Willseyville Railroad Station on property now owned by the Andrews family. I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah.
And in 1966, some of the foundation of the building was still visible. Now, Asa Frank applied for the patent in September 1884 and received the patent in December 1885. And then they built this big factory. It was 2 or 3 stories high, 3 stories high. But he died very soon after, unexpectedly, in late 1887 at the age of 33. And I couldn't find anywhere how much longer the factory went on. So this is his patent, and this is a furniture store in Ithaca which sold White Brothers bent chairs. They were bent here, but also here to be under the legs. And I meant to say the Fairfield Cheese Factory, the books are here. I think it lasted from 1902 until 1920s, perhaps. I'm not positive on when that ended either. Does anyone else have anything to say about any of those factories? Yes, Rob.
The cheese factory wasn't right on the corner of,
Okay.
it was on down Fairfield, down Fairfield way. And I remember when I plowed that field, you could still find the remains of the rock and the soil was real poor right on the corner of the field. And then we were told when we moved down the hill, that they took that cheese factory at some point and they pulled it over and made a house out of it. If you go on up there at the intersection of Candor Hill and Fairfield, you see a little house that's there. That was the hired man's house. The house that was the cheese factory, which was added on to 2 or 3 or 4 different directions, was right next to it. And that burned, we moved there in 76, no, I Saturday where the two houses were, and, the fire company, back then, they would play fire games with a burned out house, and they came and they burned on it for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and then one Saturday they came and burned it to the ground, and we leveled the spot off. That's what happened to the cheese factory, the best that we can tell.
We also have an 1869 map that I forgot to bring, and it shows a cheese factory. If you look, turn onto Barton Road on Fairfield, just before the first bridge.
Right.
There's
So,
another-
yeah, and that one evidently went out of business for some reason, and then in 1902, these farmers got together and decided to start another one. But I'm sure there were several all over the community, because the farmers didn't want to haul their milk too far, I would imagine, back then.
You mentioned a couple names there, Charlie Bateman would be Gene Jackson's
Right.
grandfather, A.J. Newman
Yeah.
would be my great-grandfather, and I recognize some of the other names there too.
There's Strongs and
Strong.
Gardens.
There was remains of the laid up stone well where Darlene just spoke up on Barton Road, right along the edge of the creek. I don't know if it's there now, but for a number of years you could see the remains of, let's say, you knew something was there. With a big ash tree and there's a big spruce tree there too. Sure it was.
Anybody have anything else to contribute? Mike?
My grandfather, Myron Miller, had a leather coat. He was a hunter back then. He shot a deer. And he told me that coat was made in the glove factory.
It could have been because they
It
did,
had a red and black wool lining to it. And I had it, sent it to John Stickles to have a new zipper put into it, and the dry cleaner burned.
yeah, I know they did make jackets at some point, I think just to keep going with their business. And they were deerskin jackets. Anyone else?
Nancy,
Yes,
that White's Chair Factory
right,
was out on Willseyville Square.
okay, Willseyville Square.
Remember Bushy where Cliff Pacini used to live there?
Oh, yeah. Well,
That big house?
I thought it was up front, on the curb
No,
more,
it was,
Gary,
yeah, it was down towards the creek more there.
going the other way.
Yeah, and,
I know
when
that.
I moved to Willseyville in 1958, we used to play out in there, and there was something with a foundation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna tell you.
Out in there, and with Schumacher growing up through the middle of it. And
Yeah.
that's where the White's Chair Factory was.
So, a lot of these factories didn't stay around much, but the glove factory, 62 years, I think that's a long time, and a lot of people were employed there that lived here. Did a lot for the community as far as bringing money in to people. I just wanted to mention, there's a lot of stuff, more stuff over here about the glove factory, including some pairs of gloves. Here's one of the elephants, belongs to Elsie, made from the scraps. Carol has just put together a new I Remember When book about Candor. So volume 2, we have volume 1 and volume 2. And, they are $18 a piece. They have stories from lots of people. You can look in the front, it tells you what story and who wrote it. And again, we have barbecue tickets. But feel free to come up and look at things, please. I'd like you to see these things.
The Candor Shoe Company was the Kinney Street. Is that
Kinney actually, he had nothing to do with the Candor Shoe Company. But George Kinney, came from Candor, and, he ended up, he was in New York and he started Kinney Shoes.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly his path to get there, but he was from Candor, and he did hire some young men from Candor. Paul Ward worked for him in New York City for a while after he got out of the service, I think. He tried to let young people from Candor come down there and help if they could.
Yeah.
But I believe the factory wasn't here. I don't know where the factory was.
Okay.
Anything else? I will get this out of the way, and I will encourage you to come and look at all this stuff. Yes.
I was struck by the date of the cheese factory.
Yeah.
Just a little anecdote, some of you know this, but, from the Bunnell family that ran the brickyard, Florilla Bunnell went to the West Coast and died on the West Coast, and her family was doing genealogy and discovered she'd never been buried here in Candor by her husband. So 101 years later, she was shipped back, and we did service at 2011 in the Maple Grove Cemetery. So that's kind of unusual. They did some research and they found that she had been cremated and she was still in storage there. 101 years later.
Wow.
He was small.
So we encourage anybody who'd like to be a member, We've got some membership forms up on the table, and we'd love to see you all at all of our programs. Please take a look around.
Thank you, ladies.